Welcome back to One Piece Explained. Chapter 1145 is a pretty breezy chapter with some solid action and some very interesting lore developments for the Rocks Pirates and Big Mom, so let's get right into it. We get the 30th entry in the Ogre Child Yamato's Golden Harvest Circuit Pilgrimage cover story, but it's a fairly uneventful one this week, as we just see Ulti reuniting with Page 1 in the aftermath of Who's Who's defeat. There's not much to say about this one, though it is interesting that Yamato has their back turned to the siblings, as this does work to continue the mystery of whether or not they will be antagonistic toward one another. I guess we'll have to wait another week for that, so let's get into chapter 1145, Wildfire in Forest Sector 2, Branch Route 8. We pick back up in the underworld and find Zoro, Sanji, and Goldberg facing down a giant dinosaur, but more specifically a Groggysaurus. Much like many of the other beasts found in this part of the island, the Groggysaurus was another animal that Oda had designed for the One Piece film Strong World. Goldberg blocks and even breaks its fangs by using a shield, who we come to learn is named Nash. We've long speculated that this item was a homie ever since its introduction back during the Straw Hat Grand Fleet cover story, and it's in this chapter that we finally get full confirmation. Since Goldberg had just been recently born during the events of the Big Mom flashback, I had wondered if this shield was perhaps given to him as a gift by Mother Carmel, the previous user of the Soul fruit, but it's here that we learn this shield actually belonged to Goldberg's father and came to life during an expedition to vanquish Big Mom. There's a lot to dissect with just this brief backstory for the shield, so let's start with its original owner, Goldberg's dad. Looking through Big Mom's flashback, there are a lot of potential candidates who vaguely resemble Goldberg in some ways, but for him to clash with Big Mom would mean that he may have been a giant warrior pirate, since it seems many of the regular villagers of Elbaph do not leave the country. This somewhat narrows down the field, but even still there's not an obvious pick. Funny enough, when looking through these old chapters to see who Goldberg may resemble, I made the potential connection that this yet to be named giant speaking with Oimo and Kashi during Big Mom's flashback may even be Stanton's father, just given how similar their expressions and appearances are. Whoever Goldberg's father may be, he would have had to have fought with Big Mom at some point within the last 63 or so years, after Mother Carmel passed away. Our earliest depiction of Goldberg is around 22 years ago after the events of Ohara, where we see him along with Hyruden and Gerd salvaging the books from the lakes. We don't see Nash with him at this time, but in fairness, he's also not shown with his cape or anything else on his torso since he's in the water. I'm interested to see if we'll get any follow-up on this expedition to vanquish Big Mom, and honestly, I'm hoping that we get to see her return to the story in some capacity soon, whether that be in real time or in flashback, especially with the rock stuff that pops up later in the chapter. Also really quick, it should be noted that Nash being able to grow in size like this is somewhat interesting. Most homies we've seen throughout the series have not been able to do this, aside from Big Mom's special homies like Prometheus, Zeus, and Napoleon, who could all grow and or extend as needed. If this ability is something specific to the special homies, it would be pretty wild to learn that Nash also has Big Mom's soul inside him, though we do get some dialogue from him in this chapter where he expresses some amount of reverence for Zeus, calling him one of the most exalted homies, which suggests that Nash is just a regular homie after all. Now, alongside Goldberg are Sanji and Zoro, who seem to have joined in on this hunt for meat, kind of harkening back to the dinosaur hunting competition in Little Garden, though here the two are working together in tandem for their prey, as Sanji sends Zoro into the air to slice through the Groggysaurus' neck. While Zoro does not name his attack here, it does look to be a classic onigiri with his blade seemingly coated in armament hockey, and Sanji uses a variant of the Arme de l'air technique, which we first saw used with Luffy back during Drum, though this is the Arme de l'air assault technique, a version that he used with Zoro against Big Pan during the Long Ring Longland arc. Back over with the rest of the group, it seems Loki has filled the others in on who it was that put him in this condition. Hyruden asserts that this must be some sort of consequence from Loki's time out at sea, though Loki interestingly retorts that if he had made it that far to confront the Holy Knights, he would have been able to be king of the world by now. This is a very specific phrase, as you may remember it as a status belonging to Emu, the only one to sit atop the empty throne, but also as a motivation of Roxy Zebek. After some great gags between Luffy and Loki with hot food, which was prepared by Goldberg, the cook of the new Giant Warrior Pirates, we get some interesting parallels between the Accursed Prince and the Straw Hat Captain, as Loki reveals that he can also sympathize with idolizing a certain pirate as a kid. Similar to how Luffy, and I suppose also Colin, had asked Shanks to take them with him, Loki also had asked Zebek to join his crew at some point in time as well. Of course, they were all rejected, but when they tried to prove their might to their respective captains, Zebek retaliated in full force and put Loki down immediately. Interestingly enough, Loki wishes that he had been born even earlier, perhaps so that he could have been old enough and strong enough to be able to go with Zebek on that fateful day. There's tons to talk about here, so let's start with just that. When did this take place? Well, we know Loki is 63 years old in present day, and the Rocks Pirates were operating up until around 38 years ago when they disbanded with the God Valley incident, so that gives us a time frame of about 25 years. We know the Rocks Pirates were active as far back as 44 years ago, as that was when Kaido was first recruited, and Whitebeard, who is also seen in this flashback, had already been on the crew at that time. We knew Loki had befriended the underworld beasts by the age of 10, so I'd venture to say that the scene is taking place sometime between 53 and 44 years ago. Rocks mentions that his purpose for coming to Elbaph was not just to take some kid with him, which begs the question, what were his actual intentions? If his motivation was always to become king of the world, I wonder if he had come to recruit capable giants for his crew, and it seems likely that this notion of becoming the king of the world rubbed off on Loki to some extent. It should also be noted that the depiction of Xebec in this chapter is a bit unique from his previous depictions, most of which were presented to us as passing imagery from another character, as opposed to being part of an actual flashback scene. When Sengoku thought about him, we saw him as a shorter figure with his wild spiked hair and sword in hand, while later on, we got a slightly more vivid depiction from Kaido's memory, where the hair takes a bit more shape and his facial features are a bit more discernible. In this chapter, we're back to full-on silhouette, though we do get our first look at his pupil, which honestly doesn't help inform too much, but that said, the outline of his head here is a bit interesting. There are several knots or spikes of various shapes, but one in particular that is fairly rectangular, almost resembling some sort of horn. Honestly, it feels a bit reminiscent of Kaido's man-beast form, though of course, Xebec would not have this fruit at the time. I have to wonder if we're seeing a silhouette of Xebec in some sort of Zoan transformation here, perhaps even with these flowing shapes around his upper body, being the flames of a Hagoromo like an awakened Zoan. It's also interesting to see what may be some other members of the Rocks Pirates that we have yet to see in full just yet. Loki idolizing Rocks is super interesting, and I'm glad this development is being made, since it totally makes sense for the giants to have lived through the era of Rocks. The world of pirating before Roger's time has been coming into light more and more with his last several arcs, as we had known for a while that the giant warrior pirates terrorized the seas up until 100 years ago, but we had not gotten much else aside from brief Rocks pirate tidbits, and when you look at things from a step back, you can really see how the world took its current shape. The world government and Marines did not have to worry about the threat of the giants for the last 100 years because Dorian Broglie temporarily disbanded the crew with their duel, which allowed for a crew like the Rocks Pirates to eventually form and terrorize the seas in their stead, before their defeat by Roger and Garp. The remnants of that crew would go on to stake their claim, and eventually with Roger's execution, a whole new era of piracy kicked off. The warlord system came to be, and young upstarts rose up to make a name for themselves, all leading us to present day, with this world in turmoil. It's also neat to consider Loki's proposal to Lola with this new context of him idolizing Rocks, since Big Mom was once part of that crew. I wonder if there was some more deliberate motivation for Loki to try and ally with a remnant of the Rocks Pirates who was also an enemy of Elbaph, though it did seem like he may have done so out of love, given how he saw through Lola's replacement. Hopefully we get some more insight into this as well. Up in the Sun World, the giant warrior pirates are making light work of the sleep tids as they crash through one of the three draggers surrounding them. You can also spot a bear-like sleep tid to the right, though it doesn't look to be the same one that we saw in that spread a few chapters ago, unlike the bird above, which was present. The Loki sleep tid charges at the crew with the Ragnar approximation in hand, but Gaban leaps into action and makes light work of it as well. He also commends the real Loki's strength here and expresses some relief that the children didn't know just how powerful the real one was, which further makes me think that we may get to see a real formidable sleep tid pulled out of someone's memories or dreams like Usopp. We also get more of Gaban's observation hockey skills at play, as he can pinpoint the presence of three strange people on the island, noting that they may be trying to suppress themselves. We'd gotten an exchange earlier between Gunko and Shamrock, where the former told the latter to extinguish his presence, so I'm hoping to get some details on this ability soon. The firefighting team that was knocked away by the Dragger a few chapters ago seemed to be safe, as they used the water from the sea clouds to try and extinguish the flames. We see some of the same giants from that chapter once again, and it looks like Saul has beat up the Fenrir sleepy tid that attacked him in the last chapter. The hoses used by the firefighters don't seem to be strong enough to quell a flame this large in time to save the students, but luckily, we get Jinbei on the scene, who is able to manipulate the water in the sea clouds with a somewhat new technique, the sea cloud shoulder throw. This is a riff on the original move that we first saw back during the Impel Down arc, and this is not the first time that Jinbei has used a source that wasn't the ocean, as we saw him use a variant with T during the Whole Cake Island arc. Jinbei rejoins the Colin Pirates after having saved the day, where we learn that Colin views the students as his friends, despite his hardened exterior toward them. The celebrations are cut short, however, as the crew finds Gunko having made her way to their ship. This is going to be very interesting to see play out, as this group is the first of the Straw Hats to encounter a Holy Knight. Lots of cool dynamics at play, with Nami wanting to protect the children, and Gunko having some affinity for Brooks' music, though we'll have to see if that also translates to having respect for him as well. We spoke at length in the previous breakdown about what this could mean for her character and any potential betrayal, but with her jumping into action and encountering him so soon, it's hard to say where this will go. I'm excited to see what happens, and I'd love to hear what you thought about the chapter down in the comments. I know this was a pretty breezy one, pretty short, but as always, you can find all of my weekly manga breakdowns in the playlist in the description, and if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I hope to see you in the next one.